like to go to our next panelist, who is Michael Oliphant, who's Director of Research for the Daily Bread Food Bank.
Thanks, John. As you might expect, food bank use has always been greatly impacted by recessions and by unemployment and downturns. And in fact, Daily Bread formed in somewhat similar circumstances to now, during the recession in the 1980s, although John has pointed out how there are differences in what that recession actually meant at the time. But what happened is a coalition of agencies that do hunger and food relief programs in the GTA at the time came together and they said, we're seeing unprecedented need, and that was at a time when EI and social assistance was much stronger than it is now. What can we do to best be able to address that need? And they decided that one umbrella organization, Daily Bread Food Bank, should form to coordinate all of those individual food relief programs that existed on the ground, hopefully improve the donations, the quality of the food, the money donations that were coming in, and better coordinate services to people. So it's interesting that we're here now, over 20 years later, with a broader group of people and organizations, coming to some of the same ideas that we need to improve the quality of programs for people on the ground, but also we need to improve the programs, income programs in particular for people who are being impacted by the recession. The first sign of trouble that we saw at Daily Bread came about 8 months before the recession actually hit in the media. It was the first part of 2008. We started to see in the first 3 months increases of about 15% in each of those months in food bank use in our Toronto-based agencies. And a lot of that was that we were, at that time, already seeing a shift to more temporary work. People were going from full-time to part-time. So this wasn't really showing up in the statistics, but in terms of the StatsCan statistics, but we were seeing it on the ground. And that's continued. Overall, this year, for the very first time, client visits at food banks exceeded 1 million in the GTA. So that's the very first time that we've seen a number that high. That's an 8% increase over last year. And even more scary is that in the first few months of this year, again, like last year, we're seeing increases that are approaching 20%. So we might not have even seen the tip of the iceberg quite yet. In terms of who the new clients are, I'll be kind of brief on this. We're releasing our hunger report a week today on the 18th that will provide more information on it. But a lot of the trends that John had already indicated, we're seeing on the ground. We're seeing people that can't live, they're receiving EI, but they can't live on 55% income replacement. As Wendy said, they can't afford their rent or their mortgage and pay for food. And for the very first time in decades, we're seeing people with mortgages that are coming to food banks, which is unique in Toronto. We're also seeing people who cannot access EI for a variety of reasons. And not just EI, but social assistance as well. And one of the key reasons that they're not accessing social assistance is assets. So they're actually living off of retirement savings or any other savings that they've managed to accumulate. I think if the 90s recession was about lack of access to EI and then this big spike in social assistance that we saw, this recession is going to be about lack of access to social assistance. And another trend that we're seeing is people that are actually living on child benefits and only child benefits. The impact of these increases that we've seen in food banks are pretty severe. We have a food rationing system that we use across the city. When the client numbers increase the way they are right now, the food rationing system comes into play and ensures that the hampers are smaller because we don't have enough food to go around. We want to make sure everyone gets something, but they're not going to get the size of the hampers they were getting a year ago or 2 years ago. And that's a big concern. There's a lot of tension happening in food banks right now because people are not getting the food that they need. They didn't before. It's going to be even worse now. So we're very concerned about the people that we're seeing and the agencies that are there serving them. And in terms of our food donations, they've been about the same. So we're not seeing a 20% increase in food bank clients on the one hand, and then same amount of food on the other hand, and that's a recipe for trouble. So what we're saying fundamentally is that we need your voice. EI is clearly one of the linchpin programs right now that needs improvement quickly. Social assistance is the other program that needs improvement quickly. We need you to be telling politicians that those are the programs that are affecting people right now, and those are the programs that need improvement right now.
I'm Mike Riley, and I'm an expert actually on homelessness because I've had the opportunity to experience that for many years. What I'd like to know is if, for a simple fact that shelter, such as I'm going to point out as a Good Shepherd, can receive $1,320 per man per month, why is it that I can only collect $520 per month, and that out of that I got to support myself out of a shelter, out of food, out of transportation, out of laundry, and it's not required to do laundry or transportation out of a shelter. So there's an $800 increase for one particular person in a shelter that's, basically glorified babysat and fed 3 times a day and housed, whereas I got to go through the stress of trying to figure out how I could possibly get through the month with just this little amount of money. And I'd like to also comment on people, are taken care of, such as places like the hostels and whatnot for single men and also with women with children. How about the single gentlemen with kids? I haven't heard a statistic of a shelter that would support single males with kids. I'm sure a lot of gentlemen that would like to, have their children with them, but have to give them up to their parents or their spouses or their partners, whatever, because they can't afford to support themselves with their child. I'd also like to point out that the opportunity of food banks, I obviously been blessed with having the opportunity to go to a food bank, and yeah, those baggages are getting a lot smaller, and I see the workers that are getting frustrated. And is there any type of government that is supporting the food banks with finances?
We don't. We have actually made a decision not to accept money from government for any of our programs. We believe that people ought to have enough money in their pockets to be able to pay for their rent and their food on their own. And so by accepting government money, we think we're just playing into a system that's already broken. We don't want to be considered a legitimate social service for that service that we provide, right? And by receiving government money, we would do that. And I think there's a lot of other things we do that are very legitimate, job training and so on. But people ought to have enough money to survive with their own, on their own.
How could one get to a job training when they can't get sufficient food into them?
Yeah, I mean, that's the issue. But that's what government has to address. Food banks are not going to address that problem. Government has to address that. And so we... Yeah, that's what we're doing.
You're looking for the public's help. I mean, the public is going down into a recession, obviously. That's why we're here. There's people that work regular basis, 40 hours plus a week, that go to food banks.
Yeah, absolutely.
That look for help.
And that's why we're...
So if they can do it, if they can't survive on going to the grocery store from their work pay, how are we going to do it? Yeah. That don't work.
Yeah, and that's why we want to see changes in increased incomes for people on social assistance. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I mean, the housing benefit is one of our key proposals that we put out. That would provide a substantial amount of money to both people on social assistance and those working to help pay their rent. If they can pay their rent and not have to pay 76% of their income on rent at the start of the month, they're going to have money in the street.